Hello and welcome to Talkin' Jets. It's reality check on Thursday. We are back. Matt and Jeremy hanging out with you. Jeremy, how's it going, buddy?
Oh, I'm just having fun doing my De Niro. You're good. You're good, Matt. You're good.
I like it. You could
I'm
play
good.
it in an off-Broadway play, maybe, or something.
Maybe off Broadway.
Yeah, something like that. It's always something with this football team, as we've said pretty much in every episode we've ever done. But it is about as busy as humanly possible right now, Jeremy, with this head coaching and general manager search. I'm surprised that you or I haven't gotten added to this list with how long it's been.
Well, it seems like the only thing you need to do to be considered in popular choice for head coach by our fan base is to simply make a motivational speech. Apparently, if you show a camera footage of any head coach or assistant coach making a speech in the locker room, oh my God, we've got to get him as a coach. He must be amazing.
It seems that way. I love that. Just getting us started with Hennessy's comments in here. He goes, "So who are we hiring out of the 50 candidates?" And it's an exaggeration, but not by much. I'm pretty sure it's 14 head coaching candidates and 14 GM candidates for the New York Jets right now, which is just, as you said, it's an absurd number.
Yeah, I just hope that we don't twiddle our thumbs too long on it. Now, I know I'm not being impatient now. I understand at this point that there are many teams still in the playoffs with assistant coaches that might make, very viable, good candidates for us. And obviously, we're not going to be hiring them. But at the same time, it's like there is a spread it too thin kind of thing, right? There are things that can complicate the vision when you're talking to everybody, and it's like, and now you're dividing your kind of thoughts on so many different people. It's like, let's just eliminate the ones, like some of them with the resumes already. You can kind of look at it and just question it and say, like, what are we doing here?
I agree with you. And we did get some news this afternoon that does impact the Jets because the Raiders decided they're going to fire their general manager today.
Yeah.
So strange how they've handled it, Jeremy. They had the head coach, Antonio Pierce, go up there, do a press conference, and everyone assumed, like, oh, okay, I guess he's going to be back next year. They fire him, and then 2 days later, they fire the general manager after 1 year. So now there are 3 teams in the market for a general manager. The New York Jets were the first, then the Tennessee Titans, now add the Vegas Raiders to the list. Let's start here. Does the addition of the Titans and the Raiders scare you at all? And how are you looking at the 3 openings and the type of candidate the Jets could get?
The GM search, not as much, because I think it's very different, like with the coaching to the GMs. And I think it's because the coaching, there are some coaches, there are only a few with a very specific experience that we know what you're getting, right? So if there's an entity that you like, and I know everybody has different opinions out there. Some people love Brian Flores, some people don't, but I'm going to use Brian Flores as an example. Okay, we all know what he is. The Raiders know what he is. The Jets know what he is. Tennessee knows what he is, right? So, and all the other teams that are looking for a head coach. So, if you like a certain guy, then it becomes more of a threat the more competitors you have. Now, I think it's different with the GM search because with the GM search, you're bringing in guys and interviewing them, and you really have no idea or very little idea of what their actual role with the organization was, right? I might have the assistant general manager position, but how much power do I have within that organization? What decisions did I support and which ones that I not support? That's not as public. So, because at the end of the day, when a team makes a draft pick, everybody was on board, right? You're unified, but you don't know behind closed doors if that assistant GM had anything to do with that team's success or vice versa. You could have an assistant GM for a team that's not successful and say, well, why would we take that assistant GM, but not know that behind closed doors, that assistant GM was just screaming for all the right moves and never got their way, right? So I think it's a little bit more secretive when it becomes GM search. And I think GM search is more of a personal connection to the owners, the management of, the higher up, parts of the team, the organization, and the character, personality, and culture of the person that they want to hire. So I think that there's a lot less maybe bumping heads because each team might go in with different ideas of what they want than they are with the head coach. So I liked when we were the only opportunity. That was nice. but I don't think 3 is way too much or crazy. And I don't think I don't even think there's a high chance it's really going to take away from the guy we would have hired anyway.
I agree with you on that. And First State Jets has a really good comment that I wanted to bring up. He says the Titans are forcing a GM with a head coach, not ideal for candidates. I was going to point out, yes, they have the #1 overall pick. So that is going to be enticing, but you're signing up for it. Like, you're not going to be able to hire your own coach. It's kind of doing it the backwards way, the way that the Jets have unfortunately done it before in the past. Initially with Joe Douglas, right, when he gets brought in after Adam Gase, and 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 was brought in and paired with Rex Ryan. You're not always going to get the best of the best candidates. Now, they do have, like I said, the #1 pick, I think, is enticing, and the chance to take their own quarterback if they like one of the guys at the top. But that team needs a lot of work. The Raiders don't really scare me a whole lot. And the reason why is I don't think they're in a very good position at all. They don't have a quarterback. They're picking 6th overall, 1 pick in front of the New York Jets. That roster is not in as good of a spot as the Jets roster is in comparison. And like, what's the play there? So I think maybe you could say the Titans, because they have the #1 pick, maybe they're the most attractive destination. But I think you could take something about each of these 3 jobs and point out as a negative.
Yeah, and I was telling, on Twitter, I was having a conversation with someone. They had made a comment that what if that did we not invite Monken to interview for the head coaching job, or did he diss us? And if he dissed us, what does that say about our organization? I was like, well, maybe it says that he doesn't want to live in New Jersey. Like maybe culturally he grew up in the South, or in the central. There are people who have, like Andy Reid, for example, is pretty public about it. Like people who've interviewed and spoke to him, he likes being in the Midwest. He's a Midwest guy, right? So he's going to always lean towards jobs that were in the Midwest, and that's why I think he got out of Philly. I think he said that, and that's why I know that indirectly, because he didn't love being in the Northeast. So that's another factor. Someone might not want to live in New Jersey, or they might not want to live in Vegas. There's a million different little factors and reasons going on there. Also, one thing is, like, the Raiders just fired a general manager after 1 year. What kind of message does that send?
Yep. Great point. So I think there's definitely a negative with everyone. And on Monken, for example, like, he interviewed in 2019 and they passed up on him. So maybe it's just like, I kind of went down that road once already. I don't want to do that again. And I think you have to respect that. And the same thing, like, I know a lot of fans wanted Ben Johnson to get an interview or even to be the next head coach, but I got the feeling anyway that it seems like he's not interested. And they came up with a long list of guys that we'll pull up and get into here in a little bit. Like, there are candidates on this Jets list for both the GM and head coach that I think they'd be fine hiring. Like, there's multiple good options. Some of them are just like, they feel like they're way out there on both head coach and GM, and I would want no part of, but I think there's enough from this group that they have where they can find something that'll work.
Yeah. Oh, there's plenty of potentially good coaches, and I know people want, again, like, people get nervous if they, it has to come from a good team. And right away, if it's an assistant coach from a team that's not as good, people start to freak out. It's like, I think people got to relax about that, because, and Tigo's really big on this. This is one of Tigo's biggest criteria. Is like, I don't care if you were an offensive coordinator. Were you calling the plays? More than performance, were you calling the plays? Because different titles have different meanings. We could say that in the real world, right? I mean, I met other assistant principals who did nothing for their school. I was an assistant principal who practically ran my schools, right? So if you want to judge me by my school performance, probably acceptable. And I would say, yeah, I understand that, because I did a lot. But I also know assistant principals who the principal is very controlling and gave them very little responsibility. So you can't always know, or judge by that. You have to look at other factors. We're not actually talking to these people, so we don't know. But a lot of the young coaches that explode out of nowhere probably weren't popular hires for their fan base. So we don't always, right? So we just don't know. Ben Johnson might be a huge flop.
Because
everybody we assume that he's gonna be great because he's this amazing offensive mind. But we just don't know that for 100. Yeah, that's just not factual. Like, we don't know that for sure.
Like Mike Martz, he was a great offensive coordinator. He wasn't very good head coach. There's examples of it.
Yeah, we've seen people fail all the time. Great coordinators fail. We just hired and just went through 4 years of someone who was the premier defensive coordinator and still is thought of as a premier defensive coordinator, and it didn't work. It's a different job. He couldn't do the head coaching job. So it could be the same thing. So we don't even know. The people that we're crying over, a guy like Ben Johnson that's not coming, and we cry over it, and then he might go somewhere and absolutely flop, and in 2 years be looking for a new job as an offensive coordinator.
Absolutely. Super chat before we pull up the list of candidates. City Bert says Gino and Sam found success. What team does Zach find it? I hope that we don't get to this point, because I can't keep doing these narratives, Jeremy. I don't know about you, but I'm getting real tired of it.
I think that of all the three of these three quarterbacks, that Zach was given the most opportunity for us, as far as to show that he can grow and get better, as far as the amount of games he got. Gino was given no time at all, in my opinion. I was confused by it. Because he had a great game. He finished the year with this amazing game against Miami, and I was actually hopeful for year 3. But yet he went 5 more years and did nothing anyway. So who cares? That has nothing to do with us. Sam, right, like we all know, was a failure in Carolina with Mayfield. I think that it's a very. I just think that it's different, because I think that both of the quarterbacks mentioned here had skill sets that they just needed time and to be in the right environment, where I think Zach Wilson simply lacks the ability to be an NFL quarterback based on limitations in his game that people don't want to accept or see.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I'd be most surprised if Zach found it somewhere else based off the other guys. As you pointed out, the games, Gino got 30, Darnold 38, and I think Zach was 33 or 34. But the talent and team around Zach versus the one that was around Darnold was obviously very different.
I mean, the only way I could see it with Zach is if somebody magically transforms him into a quarterback who could drop back 3 to 5 steps, stay calm, be there in the pocket, complete without going off script, go through progressions, and make any throw on the football field. That's a big stretch from what we saw from him.
Absolutely. So, all right, we beat it around the bush long enough. Let's pull up this list of names. We'll start with the general managers, because they spoke to Ray Farmer. They interviewed today, so I might have to pull down this banner because that's how long the list is here. So bear with me for a second while I do that, and I'll read off the full list of names that the Jets have either interviewed or will interview for the GM job: Alec Halaby, Mike Borgonzi, Ray Farmer, Louis Riddick, Jim Nagy, John Robinson, Thomas Dimitroff, Ryan Gregson, Mike Greenberg, Trey Brown, John Eric Sullivan, Brian Gain, and Chris Spielman. So where do you want to start on this list here, Jeremy?
Well, I think the obvious name to me that jumps out is Mike Borgonzi, because I know he's super popular. But here's my problem. I don't argue, and I understand. I jump out too and I say, Chiefs. Wow, Chiefs, right? They were winning Super Bowls. How could that not be a great move? But again, I'll go back to obviously, Woody Johnson, whoever's doing the hiring, right? They're going to get references and find out, hopefully, honestly, what he actually did in that building. Maybe the Chiefs are great because they have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and maybe this guy Borgonzi has nothing to do with that at all. Or maybe he does, right? Maybe he has a lot to do with it. Maybe because he was with their organization a long time working up. Maybe he was the biggest advocate of Patrick Mahomes. Maybe he was screaming, we should go after Andy Reid. Maybe this guy has this great instinct and was behind all the right moves. And then again, maybe none of it has anything to do with him. And he's just happens to be working his way up in this incredible organization that's winning because they have these great pieces. We don't know that. So I'm excited that we're talking to him, and I'm hoping that we discover that and find that out. If we don't hire him, though, I think people should calm that down and not freak out and understand that maybe those are the kind of things that we were able to uncover. Maybe we realized, yeah, he's with the Chiefs, but he didn't do anything for them. So these are the things that none of us get to see. So So that's why I'm starting with him, just as a, we don't know. We only know that there's one sexy thing about this guy, and that he's from a winning organization. And if he had anything to do with it, then he's an exciting candidate.
The thing that I like about Borgonzi, just because you brought him up as the example, like, yes, he comes from the Chiefs, but it's not, for me at least, it's not just that he came from the Chiefs. It's the number of different roles that he had in in areas in the organization. So started as a college scout in 09, then moved to a pro scout in 2011, director of pro scouting in 2013, and then player personnel guy in 2015, director of football ops in 2018, and then has been the assistant general manager since 2021. So when John Dorsey was there as the GM, he promoted both Borgonzi and Brett Veach to director of player personnel. So it kind of seems like that Veach and Borgonzi has come up through that organization together. And I know that I'm pretty sure it was Veach who was the one who's, really big on drafting Patrick Mahomes. So I kind of like his progress that he made through that organization, not just that he had to stop there for a couple of years, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, I think that makes it even stronger. I think that's a great point. Like, because he kept getting promoted. Every position, he kept getting promoted. He kept getting promoted. They kept expanding his role, which means we could assume, as best we can tell, apparently at each level, he did his job really well. And, again, every time you make that stretch into that new job, you're never 100% sure, but you can't be sure about anybody. But you got to like the fact that this guy has been climbing the ladder and clearly succeeding at every ring on the way up, right? So, and it feels like very well earned and natural. Like, it's not he did one thing that got him famous, or he had one good year. Like, we get excited about candidates for the weirdest things. It's like, oh, they had like with coaching or whatever, that they had this one magical year or this one thing you could say about him. But you're right. This guy's been there forever, working his way up slowly. And it's like, who else deserves to be promoted to GM? What's more natural than that? The guy who's had 15 years of climbing the ladder.
Yeah. And that's what makes him appealing to me. And I'm not saying he's my only choice. And who knows, they could hire him and he could stink. Same thing with any of these head coaching candidates. We don't know. It's throwing a dart and hoping that you get lucky and it hits. But because of how he moved up, I think is important to note. Bino is really big on Thomas Dimitroff, who was the Falcons GM. There's a lot of retread names in there. I'll give you all the retread ones. Farmer, Dimitroff, John Robinson, Ryan Grigson, Brian Gain. Of the retreads, I guess your thoughts on Dimitroff and who you like out of some of the retread options.
I like Dimitroff too. The things I like about these guys that are the retread guys are that we could look at every move they made. Like, we can look at every draft. We could go back and look, okay, those are the years he was there. What moves did they make? What was the results, of the team and everything like that? You got to take it with a grain of salt. A GM could make a bad coaching hire, and that's going to lower their record. And, it could change everything, right? For all we know, it would have been a JD's career may have been a different world if he hired the right coach. So one bad decision, maybe he fixed it. Got a team to the Super Bowl, right? That Atlanta team that went to the Super Bowl, I believe, was him. So, he did something that I haven't seen in my lifetime for the Jets. I've been a fan for over 40 years. I've never seen them in the Super Bowl. So I'm not saying that every Jet fan or I should automatically say he's my number one or whatever. But for the people who get mad when it's not the person they want, if you're screaming and yelling, that's ridiculous, this would be the worst hire in the world, how could you say that? This guy led a team as the GM, somehow put together the right pieces, that team went to the Super Bowl, something we hadn't done in over 50 years. So, yeah, if they hired Dimitroff, sign me up. Who am I to complain about that? That's absolutely nuts. If you're a Jet fan, why would you complain about a GM who's done more with the Atlanta Falcons than we've ever seen in our lifetime as Jet fans?
I definitely like him the best out of guys who have done the job. I think he would rank in my top 3 candidates for this position. But honestly, the other retread option names, Like Farmer, I don't think he did a very good job in Cleveland. He doesn't really move me all that much. John Robinson in Tennessee, I know they had some success early on, but I worry about how things ended there and him not getting along with Vrabel. And the decision to trade AJ Brown was, I think, very questionable and clearly something that Vrabel didn't like and didn't want to do. And then Ryan Grigson, I know he has a winning record, but I think his unfortunate poor drafting and inability to build an offensive line was a big reason why Andrew Luck ended up retiring at 29 years old. So that's another guy that gives me a little bit of pause. So any thoughts on the guys I just rattled off there?
No, I think you make great points. I mean, like Farmer, I have a very difficult time with, because it's like you look at Cleveland and it's like blah, right? I mean, it's like how hard is it when you look at their history before the last couple of years? They've had some good players and then they screwed up the quarterback thing, but like it doesn't look good. And then Grigson, like a guy, if you don't have a good background in your draft picks, we cannot go back there as Jet fans. We can't go back to GMs who can't draft, right? I mean, that's just off the table for me. It's like you have to be able to show you can make good draft picks, and then, and then not being able to protect Andrew Luck is just unforgivable. Like there are certain things it's like, yeah, but I did this and this and that. If you don't know that it starts in the trenches, I mean, the problem, JD said all the right things, starts in the trenches. He just didn't back it up. He didn't execute it well enough, right? But you at least have to know that it starts in the trenches. And the fact that after Andrew Luck's basically retired early because of concussions, then the Colts went on within a few years to build one of the best offensive lines we've seen in the last 2 decades, is absolutely the most ridiculous head-scratching thing in the world. Like you waited until Andrew Luck was gone and then decided to build a great offensive line. So no, I definitely want somebody. I want somebody who, and I hope that we get somebody who understands that very basic philosophy of you at least have to draft well, and it doesn't necessarily have to be first-round picks.
Right.
I would love a guy who could find third-round picks that become quality starters in the trenches, right? But it's got to be someone who prioritizes and spends and puts a lot of resource into making sure that we are very good at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball.
So Jet Life adds a comment saying that nobody's mentioned that Rick Spielman is hiring our GM, interviewed his younger brother, Chris Spielman. Well,
like, please read this.
Yeah, please read this. So we got it on. This doesn't bother me because Chris Spielman played a very integral part of the Detroit Lions turnaround. He was the one that hired the general manager and was very instrumental to hiring the coach as well. So it's not like it's, Joe Blow, this guy who hasn't done anything. I think like Chris Spielman was a very big part of the Lions turnaround. So I don't think this is like an out of blue candidate. So that one doesn't bother me at all.
I think it's perfectly logical to raise your eyebrow when you first see the name, right? And say, okay, is there a little bit, what's going on? It's his brother. It's like, that's not what we're here for. But then when you say what you just said, and you look at what Chris Spielman has done, hiring the GM, obviously by recommending him and helping Detroit hire and make that hire, they had a similar vision, similar mindset, right? You wouldn't recommend someone you didn't have a connection with. So I don't know. I kind of have this feeling that he had that same understanding and belief in the direction of the Detroit Lions. And yeah, I mean, if he proves that in an interview, or if he shows that interview, or shows that kind of, skill set or ability as a GM, I'll sign up for that all day long, because Detroit has really done it right. They're a great model of a team. If you want a team that, as we were doing it wrong, we were in the same place as them, same starting point. You want to look at a team that did it right. They're the team that did it right. So if we have a guy who knows how they did it and had an understanding of how to do it, come join us right now. I'll sign up for that all day long. I love the GM list. I think there are great candidates out there. That's why originally when we started the show, I said, I'm not worried that there's 2 other teams out there because looking for a GM, because I think that with us, it's just about making the right decision. It's not about there's not enough available qualified people.
Do you have a favorite or a top few that really jump out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, obviously Mike Borgonzi jumps out as somebody again. You added to my belief in him just by bringing out that point of how many years he was there, and like that was such a great point and a great way to look at it. But obviously, just being from the Chiefs, I want to learn more about that. Obviously, I'm very intrigued. I want to know how much he had to do with building that organization, you know, and what his role was, and the fact that he was there for like 15 to 18 years, or at least of it, you know, is pretty. Like it makes him pretty appealing. And I agree with Bino. Like I'm always, you know, here's a GM that was in a Super Bowl with his team. That's exciting. Really could have won this. He had nothing to do with them not winning the Super Bowl. The fact that Tom Brady went God and like decided to come back from a 27-point deficit, but they were pretty much, you know, they had the team to win the Super Bowl and it kind of fell apart. But like has nothing to do with him. He put them on the field and they had every opportunity to win that game. And then I don't know, Chris Spielman he's intriguing to me too. It's like interesting. You're picking out the guys that do jump out off for me and that have been jumping off for me, but I'm not as emotionally about it or passionate about it as some people. Like if it's not one of those three and we hire one of these other guys, it might be questionable to me, but I'm not going to pretend I know enough or I'm connected to the behind the scenes enough to really be too harsh. I'm like, if it's one, like, let's say it was just, Mike Greenberg, you know, my eyebrow will go up, but then I will wait to judge. I will wait and I will see the moves we make and I will judge him for what he does, but I'm not going to flip out and go nuts and say, let's burn down MetLife.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Greenberg because that was the one that I wanted to add to of guys that I like. Borgonzi, Dimitrov, and Greenberg, I think, are three of my favorites. And a reasoning behind that is he's been like Tampa Bay's cap guy. And I think they've done a good job transitioning from the Tom Brady era. Okay, you know, we're going for it to win a championship. And they've remained successful in that transition and finding Baker Mayfield and making it work. So, and plus he's from Long Island and a Jets fan. So that gives a little extra nod too.
I think the thing that stabs Jet fans is, and it shouldn't, and it's unfair that it does, but the second the term cap guy is used, right away it brings people back. 𝐒𝐿𝐷, you know, like right away, it brings you to 𝐒𝐿𝐷, and we overgeneralize this too much. Like we see Jet fans do it all the time. Not a cap guy, never again, never. He's automatically horrible. And then they flip out. It's like, well, he's not only a cap guy, right? We said that because he's done a great job with the cap. He's also made some great decisions there in Tampa, like based on, you know, if he's the guy that's been helping make it, like bring in Baker, like after the Tom Brady, that transition has been a brilliant transition. If he was a part of that transition, like, and you know, he's a major part of that transition, that's an attractive thing I want to learn more about, which is why I said, yeah, my eyebrow would go up if we hired him, because knowing that, you know, what he's more known for, that background and that description as a Jet fan after what we've been through. But at the same time, before I start screaming, yelling, and getting mad or upset, I'm just going to wait. And like, he's going to have a draft. We're going to get to see what decisions he makes on the quarterback. We'll see how he handles the Garrett Wilson situation. We'll get to see, and then we can judge. But there's no point in flipping out and automatically screaming, that's it, we suck for the next 10 years. It doesn't make, nobody knows that with any of the guys on this list that we're going to suck for the next 10 years.
No, I like Peter S. chimes in. He says, hey, fellas, I love Borgonzi and Sullivan because they moved up the rungs in one organization each and learned a lot along the way. So that's another name maybe that you could toss in there as someone who, you know, has been with one organization, served a bunch of different roles. And I mean, like, the Packers, they do a lot right too. So that's kind of a organization to pick from.
Yeah, if you're going by organization and someone who's been there a long time, I love Green Bay as an organization. Like they've done it right for my whole life, for the most part. There hasn't been, maybe in like there was one point in the 80s, the early night before Brett Favre, but since Brett Favre joined that team from 1992 to now, here we are in 2025. That's a good model organization.
Yeah, I would say so. Johnny Boy wants to know, what about this pairing? Aaron Glenn as head coach, Mark Brunell as offensive coordinator. He's the quarterback's coach right now in Detroit.
Aaron Glenn might end up being an amazing head coach, but I have no evidence of that. Like, I am not nearly as confident as everybody else. Like, I love the guy. I mean, I'm a Jet fan, right? Who doesn't love Aaron Glenn? I like what I saw in Hard Knocks. I like his intensity. He has a feel to me that I like, that feels kind of familiar. Like, he doesn't feel like one of those just kind of fat, pathetic loser coaches that stand on the sideline. Like, he feels like he has that intensity, like one of those guys who's going to demand a lot from his team and fire them up. But I'm not, I just don't, it's not like Detroit's had the number 1 ranked or the top 5 ranked defense for 8 years, right? He hasn't gone to multiple places and shows he could build a great defense. He was with them for a while. They drafted defense constantly. They were so focused on it. And Hutchinson, defensive edges, they were doing everything to fix their defense. I think he's done a great job with them, but it's very fast. Like, to me, it's very sudden. Suddenly, Aaron Glenn is and he might end up being a Super Bowl head coach. And there are good vibes I get from him, but I'm a little bit concerned about the suddenness of it. Like, a year ago, nobody was talking about Aaron Glenn, and I think there are other guys on our list that are a little bit more proven or have been doing it a little bit longer that I feel a little bit more comfortable with. So I'll say his ceiling is unlimited. So I'm not saying, I'm not one of these people saying, like, everybody gets so extreme if they're against something. Oh, you can't win. You can't. No. I'm not going to go crazy. His ceiling could be Super Bowl coach. Great coach. He could be the next Pete Carroll, right? Sure. But at the same time, the floor could be really low. Like, I could also see it being another Jet flop, like another humiliating. We bring back an old Jet, and what does he do? We just become the Jets, like, we just suck. So I just think he has a really big window of, could be a complete flop to being a great coach. So it's a little bit more of the rolling the dice thing and a little less secure than taking some guys that are a little bit more proven, where maybe the ceiling's not as high, but the floor is not as low either.
Yeah, I like Aaron Glenn. I don't know if he's my number 1 choice. I wouldn't be mad at that hire, but it's another guy. It's another unknown, right? Because we haven't seen him in that position. I do think, though, that he is a little bit different than Robert Saleh and how he handles himself. Like, he seems like he's a little bit more, I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but it feels like he's a little bit more vocal and critical of the players and not so much like buddy, which that's the kind of change that I think the Jets need to make.
Absolutely. He definitely gives me the feel of he's accountability. You know what I mean? And it's interesting. I said Pete Carroll before. One of the reasons I love Pete Carroll is a player's coach. He is, but like Parcells was, but he's also an accountability guy. You become his player by earning it. You don't just become his player because, like Saleh, who's just kissing and licking the balls of every single player we had. Sauce, this and that one. Hey, buddy. Everyone. No. You like I want to coach where you have to earn it. You want to become like coach-player relationship where they come to the sideline, he has his guy. That has to be earned through leadership, through winning, through, and I that's what I do love about Aaron Glenn. Like Glenn. I mean, I do like that. Again, he has that vibe. He has that Tomlin vibe too, like from Pittsburgh. He has that kind of vibe. Like, this is a guy who means business. He's not a clown. He's not going to clown himself. He's not joking around. He's not goofing around. Like, I like that because I definitely want whoever we hire. That's the mentality I want. I don't want the fun thing. I mean, somebody said it. I think Rex said it. The best thing Rex Ryan said that I agree with as an analyst was, this can't be a freaking resort.
Yeah, it can't.
Like I'm done with it. And he's right. It feels like it was like a resort. And that's got to go. This is like real deal stuff. This is business. And everybody better come up and be ready for business.
Now, I want to get your take on this because JV Free has been very vocal about it and very against it. And his comment is, Borgonzi is a loser. Decades at the Chiefs, not a GM.
I don't know where that's coming from. Like he's just saying he's a loser. It just has no backing to it.
Yeah,
he's no backing to it.
It's because he hasn't gotten a GM job. We don't know if he's a loser. He could be.
like I got a clown in the chat saying, "Did I just say that Aaron Glenn was Tomlin? Is that what I said?"
That's not the interpretation that I got.
Right. I don't understand what's wrong with people.
It's JV Free again.
Come on, like, do you have any critical thinking in your brain at all? I said that he has a feel of him from a certain personality perspective, and that is the intensity. Tomlin is an intense human being. I know because when I went up to him in Mobile, Alabama, I'm here for business, and brushed us aside. And then I've seen it in other examples on video where he does that. And that's the intensity that I get from Glenn. When you see Aaron Glenn, he has this intensity to him, like an all business, no bullshit guy. I'm not comparing them as coaches in any other way than that. So I don't know what he's talking about. But hey, not everybody's the brightest. So.
JV Free also follows it up with, if Morganti was so good, why didn't Casey make him GM after decades? Well, they made it. Brett Veach has done a pretty freaking good job, and he's been Brett Veach's guy. They've come up together. So
they made him, he got promoted 15 times at every level. And there was 2 guys that came up that was great in the organization. They had these 2 young star people in their personnel department. They both rose up. You had to pick one. One got the position. The other was his main guy. They've had crazy success together. It continues for the last few years. Now the other guy gets his shot. That's evidence that he's a loser. I mean, lucky this guy's not making the hire, because come on, let's get some brains here. We'll go back to school. Let's learn how to be schools. Sorry to insult our listeners and our viewers, but come on, get some college.
Want to get into some of the head coaching names? I feel like we spent a lot of time on the GMs here so far. Looking at the head coaching list, you have Aaron Glenn, who we just talked about, Bobby Slowick, Joe Brady, Vance Joseph, Arthur Smith, Riverboat Ron, Rex Ryan, Matt Nagy, Mike Vrabel, Brian Greasy, Brian Flores, Josh McCown, Darren Rizzi, and Steve Spagnuolo, the latest add to the list. So I'll pitch you the same question that I asked you about the general managers. What do you like about this list? Who do you don't like about this list? Let's bat it around.
Well, Spagnuolo failed as a head coach, right? But who is he the head coach for? Like, and what was the situation?
St. Louis Rams.
It was pretty bad. I loved him as a defensive coordinator, obviously growing up in the New York area. I admired his work. He's been great everywhere he's went as a defensive coordinator. But again, he hasn't succeeded as a head coach. I think, are we really gonna play that game? We haven't been in the playoffs longer than any other NFL team. I think that we can't go with a guy whose resume says that he's a defensive coordinator and not a head coach. I just don't think we could do it. So I cross him out. I love Rex Ryan, the human being, and I get that people love Rex and everything, but I'm sorry. I remember the last 6 years of him as a head coach after the first 2. And I just can't get over that, and I can't buy the excuses that it was 𝐒𝐿DIC's fault. I watched us go to 2 AFC championship games. I love Rex Ryan. And then for 4 years, he stunk up New Jersey. And then he went to Buffalo, and they got rid of him before the season even ended, before the last game in the second year. Okay, and they ran him out of town. I'm sorry that I can't let that go. It's 6 years that he didn't have a winning record. 6 years without a winning record. It's very hard for me I love him as a human being. I'm a Jeff fan. He's part of our history. He's a beloved figure. He did an amazing thing for 2 years. He gave us the thrill of a lifetime. At least he gave me a thrill of a lifetime. 2 incredible years. I loved his attitude. I loved the show. I just don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, this to go backwards and to start with the guy who started the playoff drought, I just don't know.
And also, too, just to jump in here on the Rex talk, love the guy, appreciate him for 2009 and 2010. Well, by far most fun years that I've had watching Jets football. But does that not also continue like this circus narrative around the Jets? That feels like a very circus hire. Like we just went through it with Aaron Rodgers the last couple of years, and not all of it's Rodgers' fault, but at the same time, like if you hire Rex back, that opens up like they're going to get talked about on ESPN every day, and not for good reasons.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing if we've learned anything the last couple of years, man, we so badly need a coach that's going to stop the leaks and keep us out of the news. Like if we're going to be in the news, it's got to be for winning. Like, or just making great decisions. Like the circus has got to leave town already. It's time to get the circus out of town. It's like one of those traveling circuses came into town and all the trucks broke down and our mechanics don't have the parts. So like the shit show is stuck in our town. And then that's what the town has become known for, right? Where there's this shit show. It's time to get those trucks on the road, get them out and bring in somebody real. That's why one of the positives I think in Aaron Glenn that I like, right? You know, again, when I say he has that potential for flop, one of the things I like is I don't think he's a shit show, though. I don't think he's going to embarrass us.
No.
I think there are some guys, I think Brian Flores is definitely a guy. I know he's either a love or hate guy, which I can't understand. I can understand not loving Brian Flores. I can't understand hating Brian Flores. No, I don't want a guy who has experience and has done really well and went to Minnesota and has turned that defense around as a coordinator, but also has head coaching experience. Like, I mean, I can understand being neutral on Flores, but I don't know how you could be. I like absolutely hate Brian Flores. I personally think if Vrabel's really out of the picture, I think Flores is probably our safest bet as far as the highest floor.
Yeah.
I don't know what his ceiling is, but I think he has the highest floor. We're not going to be a shit show if you give this team to Brian Flores within after the first season. Let's say fast forward 2 years, we're going to be 9-8 in my mind, or 8-9. But that's the floor. That's the worst case scenario. That's
even the first year with Miami when they went 5-11, that team, that whole offseason, everyone was saying they're going to be 0-16. That was the tank for Tua year. And then obviously Joe Burrow came out and Justin Herbert came out and they ended up being great. And Joe Burrow ended up being picked ahead of Tua, but they won 5 games in a year where they were supposed to win 0. And then
it was amazing how competitive they were. Like I said, this coach is amazing.
They went 9-7 and 10-6, and he got let go after a 10-6 season.
He was turning that organization around. He was he was totally. I was very worried as a Jet fan. That's how I base somebody, right? Like he scared me. I said we're in trouble. Miami Dolphins are going to be a problem. Of all the guys that fell off the Belichick tree, that was the one that was doing it. That was the one that it looked like it looked like he was building a powerhouse organization. That's how I saw it. He was getting better each year. He was doing it as he was slowly rebuilding a roster. He started with a horrendously bad roster. The speed in which that roster turned around was incredible. And a lot of it was just him making players better than they really were based on really smart scheme, being a great motivator, putting him in a position to succeed. I think he's a great coach.
I do as well. Not everyone does. Nick says Flores is not the guy. Tom says Flores is horrible. Joey says
with no reason, with no logic to it at all. Right? 5-6, took over a horrible team, got better every year, was growing the record. We've never had a coach like that. Who's come here where we've gotten better from their first year to their third year? Not Rex. What coach have we ever had stay 3 years where they're better the third year, where they went up, the record got better every year? Yet he's horrible with no reason or explanation, right? They have nothing behind it that makes any logical sense. They can't give me one thing he did wrong as a coach or why he wasn't a good head coach, except their emotion of, oh, he was Miami and Gase came from Miami or some ridiculous reason. But you can't give me any logical reason that takes any brains, any logic, any critical thinking skills, nothing real on this guy to say he's a horrible coach, except I'm just going to say he's horrible, brainlessly say it with nothing to back it up.
See,
like, why can't it just be, I don't like him, I don't see why he's good, fine. But no, I've got to go and say he's horrible because suddenly I'm smarter than the rest of the world. And even though everything he's done says he's not horrible, I'm going to sit there and call him horrible. Maybe whoever's calling him horrible should look at our record the last 5 years, the last 10 years, and realize what horrible is and tell me how he's horrible. Because he's anything and was anything but what we were. He was the opposite of what we were.
The pushback is the Tua discussion that he couldn't work and deal with Tua.
I mean, who cares? He didn't get along. He didn't believe in Tua. Half the Miami fan base said he sucked until the end, and 90% of the Jet fan base said he sucked. And to this day, people are saying he's a system quarterback and won't give the kid any credit. And you know what? If he stuck to his gun and kept saying it, I'd say I have a problem with him. The fact that he said, "Yeah, I'm learning, man," that was one of my biggest mistakes as a coach. The way I treated him and my misjudgment of him. Fine. You're going to find a coach out there that hasn't made a mistake?
And also,
but
too,
at least he took
like,
yeah.
I was going to say, it's not like you're hiring him right after that. He went and worked under Mike Tomlin, who we both like as a head coach, for a year. He's worked under Kevin O'Connell, who I think's done a pretty damn good job in Minnesota the last couple of years. So hopefully he's learned from that 3 years removed. And of the retread options, outside of Mike Vrabel, who I think would be my number one option.
Definitely.
I think Brian Flores is the next best retread option there.
Oh, easily. And it's like to pull out one mistake. He's horrible because he made a mistake. Yeah, he misjudged a player and he acted inappropriately, even fine. And these same people want Gruden, who got himself kicked out of the NFL, who hasn't had a winning team since Tampa Bay when he took over Herman Edwards' team, whoever it was. He took over a different team. He took over the other guy from Indianapolis. Right, he took over somebody else's team. And yes, his team went to the Super Bowl that he had just left. Fine. He was a very good coach in 2002, 23 years ago. What did he do for the Raiders? Were they looking that good? Their interim coach did better. When Gruden left the Raiders got better. Their interim coach did better. So, I mean, I don't understand. It's like the perception that people get of people that they won't back off of. Gruden didn't make a mistake. He cut their whole offensive line out. And there were 3 or 4 good guys in that offensive line that went on to have very good careers and are having very good careers in other cities. So don't tell me he didn't make mistakes or made bad judgments. He also made personal bad judgments with his emails. So don't tell me he doesn't make mistakes. This guy didn't hit it off with one quarterback. That's it. Could never be a head coach. Yet he went 10-6, even with those problems. Yet he went on and admitted it and took ownership and accountability of it, something that we've been screaming about forever.
Jay Taylor chimes in and says, defensive head coach means likely a revolving door at offensive coordinator for good or bad reasons. And that sounds like another ruined young quarterback when they take one. What do you think of that?
I think that Bill Belichick was a defensive coordinator who won 7 Super Bowls as a head coach. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's what also to add to it. I don't know how you feel, and we could talk about it, but I don't love the offensive names on this list. The only one that really interests me for a head coaching position would be Joe Brady, and all of them are pretty unproven, unless we're talking Matt Nagy or Arthur Smith. But those are 2 names that I would have zero interest in running back for a second stint as a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is, and I like the way you said for good reasons and bad reasons, but that's just life. Right? Like if Brian Flores became the head coach and brought in, let's say he found one of the guys from Detroit, he took the quarterback or whatever. He did it in Miami. He found a decent, let's say he finds a good offensive coordinator or a decent one. Let's say that our offensive coordinator under Brian Flores does a great job. Eventually that guy's going to leave. It's true. But part of being a great coach is, and what we have to hope is that some of the guys under him that get called up next in line that could step up if you don't go outside the organization can come in and keep that system going and keep continuity and keep it going. That's how it works. And there's nothing you could do about that. Even if it's like, oh, well, an offensive minded head coach, you don't have to worry about that. Yeah. But then if your defensive coordinator does a great job and leaves, then you have the same problem on the defensive side. And I'm not defense or offense. One is more important than the other. I'm all about balance. And I'll say that you need both. You need to play good defense or you need to play good offense, or you have to be so obscenely good at one that it compensates for the other. But that rarely is the case, right? When you watch teams like Kansas City and you watch the old New England teams, it was more than Tom Brady and Mahomes. There was also some pretty good defensive play that came with that.
Yeah. And also, too, to add on to this conversation, a good example of a recent defensive-minded head coach who had their offensive coordinator hired. Look at Mike Vrabel, who's on this list. He had Matt LaFleur as his offensive coordinator. LaFleur gets hired as a head coach. He replaces him with Arthur Smith. While we may not like Arthur Smith now as a head coaching candidate, he ran a pretty good offense in 2019 and 2020, and then he got himself a head coaching job. So the next guy that he hired to replace the guy that got hired as head coach also got a job as a head coach. Now, the third one, maybe with Downing, didn't work out as good, but he was 2 for 3.
Yeah, right. Third one in, he finally hits a snag. It's like, really? Like, we're gonna have a problem with that? I mean, everybody just wants it to go from to perfect, as if we're this organization. Like who are we? We're the worst organization in the NFL for the last 15 years. The worst. We're the only ones that haven't been put together a playoff season. And we're sitting here picking and acting like we should, like, the only guy that's good enough that for us to hire is the obvious Super Bowl winning guy, the best in the world. And like, no. It's like we're laying judgment on coaches that have done more with other teams than we've had in 15 years, and we're complaining about it. Like, I don't understand. The best coaches right now, the best head coaches right now are working. So you have to take the best one that's not working and accept that there's probably some reason. They're either not a head coach because they're an assistant. So then you have to go with a rookie coach, or something negative happens along the way. And that's why they're not a working head coach. Like, that's our choices. So obviously it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be some little catch with anyone we hire.
So because we don't win a lot, we should not have high standards. Bad take. When did
no one
not
is
having
saying
standards
that?
come
It's
into the
so
conversation?
Stupid, Tom. Are you that stupid? I'm not saying we shouldn't have high standards. I'm saying sitting there and bitching like a little girl because any coach we hire, there's going to be part of the fan base that screams, yeah, but he didn't win 100 games in his career. I mean, to sit there and pick it, you got to look at the list. There's no perfect candidate because the perfect dream head coach right now is already working. His name is Andy Reid. He's already got a job. He's not available right now. So, I mean, you're going to have to hire somebody that's either a rookie head coach, the best you can, or you're going to have to hire the best reach head coach that you could find. Who's saying no high standards? You're going to put words in people's mouth? Like, am I speaking a different language? It's like amazing. That's the hardest part about this, is that you got people that are so dumb putting comments like this in because they can't understand our language.
I don't know what the pivot would be then. If every single name on this list is not good enough for the job, who's missing where it's like, okay, yeah, that's the no-brainer guy. Mike Vrabel's here. He's over 500. He's won in this league with the Tennessee Titans, gone to an AFC championship game. And I get it. He's most likely to go to the New England Patriots. But like that's the only guy on this list that we could consider as a legitimate option. I think that there's probably 4 or 5 names here that I think could end up working. And hell, even maybe they do hire Josh McCown, who's a quarterback coach. And you know what? Sean McVay was an offensive coordinator before he got hired and it worked out. Or Kevin O'Connell was an offensive coordinator before he got hired and it worked out. Zach Taylor was an offensive coordinator. He was a position coach.
Those are low ceiling, those are high ceiling, low floor guys. And that's fine, right? If there's something you believe in them, like whoever's doing the hiring, if the GM think there's magic, like Josh McCown, again, there's always going to be a negative. The negative, he's a quarterback coach. He hasn't even been an offensive coordinator. The positive is he's a brilliant mind, and maybe he's going to be the next superstar coach. But we don't know that for sure. There's no way to know, right? So what do? If we hire Josh McCown, I would be hopeful. I'm going to hope that he's the brilliant guy that becomes the next big thing, right? And we're going to hope he's this next young star coach. But it's just simple as can be. It's like all we could do is the best we can do. You look at these guys, you weigh the negatives and the positives. That's what the GM is going to do, and you hire the best possible guy. But if you think there's a guy with no negatives, tell me who it is, because part of our fan base is going to have a negative for everyone on this list.
Yes.
There's not one name on this list or one name that anybody could say. Even Andy Reid, if I said Andy Reid resigned, we're going to hire him as a head coach, some Jet fans would have a problem with that.
No, he's too old.
Right. He's too old. He's not. His brother got into a car accident. Like his son got into a car accident with DUI. Well, like it'll be some kind of thing. Or he's burned out. He's not going to have passion. Like some Jet fan's going to have something against it. Like there's not going to be one. There's no candidate that's going to make everybody happy. What we have to hope for is, we have our preferences. We all have differences, the things we like, the things we don't like. But at the end of the day, when the Jets make their hire, we just have to hope that they're right.
I think Joey has the comment of the show. He says, check. Is it going to pop up? There we go. Check the Madden ratings on these coaches and call Brick. That might have to be the way that we do this. Solve it, right? If we look at what each one of these coaches are rated and then say Brick, all right, Mike Vrabel's a 91 coach. I think this is our guy.
Yeah, look, I mean, you want to apparently, if you're a fan that wants to influence the Jets, and I see people doing it on Twitter, it's not a fake thing. This is a real thing. People are putting their tweets of what they want and they're copying in Woody Johnson. Like they're doing that because there really is this belief, and it's starting to feel like it's true, that there's a belief that he might read it. And you might actually, like the fans, if they get enough fans to say it, he might actually do it. And I don't know that that's a ridiculous belief even. I'm not saying it is. Because there seems to be some evidence, apparently, that he is influenced by our fan base. And that we as a fan base, if we yell and scream loud enough for something, it might happen. I'm willing to say that I think the Rex Ryan interview was because of the fans. The reaction to the fans of Rex Ryan saying he wanted the job got him that interview. I believe that.
And Rex is begging on national radio, I think.
Yeah, and he's begging on national TV. But if every Jet fan would have rejected that, if 99% of the fan base would have said, no way, because if Adam Gase was on TV begging, that wouldn't have mattered. We wouldn't have interviewed him.
No. Yes.
Right? Because 99.9% of the fan base would have went ballistic and said, I will burn my season tickets if you hire that guy. Are you out of your minds? But for Rex, that wasn't the reaction. And then suddenly he's getting an interview, even though he hasn't coached in so many, So I don't know if everybody would have been anti-Rex right away and people would have went nuts against them. Would he have gotten an interview?
Probably not. I mean, he probably wouldn't have gotten an interview if that was the big reaction. But there's a lot of people who like it for nostalgia.
Yeah, look, if they hire Rex, I'm not going to be screaming angry. I'm not. I'm going to be a little bit, my eyebrows are going to raise and I'm going to be like, oh my God, really? But I'm a Jet fan.
We want it to work.
If I want it to work. So I'm going to sit there and some part of me is going to say, maybe he can give us the 2 years he gave us in 2009 and 2010. Maybe taking over a roster that has this talent on it. We have some talent on the roster. Maybe he could bring that team back, like with this roster. Like he can get the defense, like he'll fix the defensive line a little, start blitzing more, improve the defense, and maybe he'll make it happen somehow. I mean, there'll be part of me that hopes for that because I'm a Jet fan and I have no choice. I have to, because I have to believe in my team and I have to have hope. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah. What's the point is exactly right. And we're reaching the end of the show here, but we went through a lot today, going through all these names, and with the amount of names on the list, I don't think it's going to be over anytime soon. So next week, I'm sure there might even be new names we got to talk about, or maybe guys getting second interviews. So it's going to be a busy few weeks here on the channel, Jeremy.
It's going to be nonstop. We're going to be like something's going to happen with one of these people. Someone's going to make a quote that's going to freak the fan base out. You see, it's a shit show. Nobody wants to work with us. I think that's going to be the big news. It's going to be more about the rejections, like either we reject or they reject, and the reactions to that. I think we're going to have a long few weeks of a lot of fighting and a lot of yelling and a lot of hating each other. If you think a lot of people hate me now, you think that 10% of this chat hates me now, it's going to be up to 60% of the chat is going to hate me within a month from now. No question about it.
They're going to show up with pitchforks and torches.
I hate that bald guy. He has an opinion about everything. He goes on to a YouTube show and has an opinion. Oh my God, shoot him.
I love this show. I really do. Guys, that's going to do it for us on this episode. A fun episode of Reality Check. Back. We'll be here next Thursday as well. That'll do it for us for now. I'm Matt. He's Jeremy. And we will catch you next time.